Hello and welcome to the Open Virtual Film Project. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up a Lookdev lighting sublevel. Picking up where we left off, the first thing we need to do is get ourselves into the LSL layer, which we can do by either clicking here, switching to LSL, or in the levels browser, double-clicking on LSL. And we need to add a few different objects. The first of which is going to be a post-process volume. In this case, I'm going to use a special post-process volume that has all of the requisite setup done for it. To do that, I'm going to go into the OVFP plugin, post-process settings, and spawn new. So I now have this BP OVFP post-process volume. If I select it, I can choose whether or not I'm going to be using a real-world camera setup or the Unreal Unit List setup. Unreal Unit List is just an exposure compensation value. You go up and down. Much simpler versus real world, which takes into consideration aperture shutter speed and ISO. This is more of a global consideration for an entire scene. By default, it will select real world and give you common camera values for a real world outdoor daylight during the middle of the day scene would be like. We will be exploring post-process settings later on, so for right now, we're just going to leave these values how they stand. In the tools playlist linked in the description is a further deep dive on how the post-process volume that we're using works. The next step is to drag something out into the scene so that we can see what our lighting levels are doing. So I'm going to go over to this Place Actors section. If it's not visible, it's under Window, Place Actors. In Basic, I'm just going to drag a cube out into the world. And if you are in lit mode, it should show up entirely black. As we're working on the next step, this would be a white object in your scene. And since we are working in a Lookdev lighting look, we want this to be relatively evenly lit. To do that, we're going to jump into the light section and grab a skylight, drop it into the scene, come into the details panel, and do a few quick modifications. I'm going to change its source type to a specified cube map. We don't want captured scene because we're not putting a sky sphere into the environment yet. So with a specified cube map, we can choose this drop down and choose an appropriate HDRI texture from it. If there's nothing showing up in this HDRI section, you can come down into this view options, show engine content, and it'll give you a few more options. I really like this gray light texture cube from engine resources for my Lookdev looks, so I'm going to use that one. Then for now, we're going to use entirely movable lighting. So anytime we add a light to the scene, we want to make sure that it is set to movable. This just prevents you from getting an error say in the top right hand corner saying lighting needs to be rebuilt, and a lot of other hiccups along the way. So I'm going to change this object from stationary to movable here. This is just removing some hiccups. We will talk about further lighting in a later video. And then I need to change my intensity scale to match the exposure of my scene. By default, the unit list standard will give a nice even flat wash. So if you don't want to have to think about these values, use the Unreal lighting style values. However, since I chose the real world values, I need to bump my intensity up on everything. I'm not going to be talking a lot about why I'm choosing a lot of the values that I am. Right now, we're trying to get a nice flat even wash so that you can see what we're doing, but we don't care about the actual intensity values. In my case, my intensity scale of 5000 on this skylight gives me a nice flat wash so I can see what I'm doing. If I wanted to go a step further, I might do something like add in a directional light and set its intensity to 100,000 lux, which is real world day, and that gives me a key and fill light in my scene. If you're doing an interior, the directional light might not be as useful, but it is nice for exteriors to get a little bit more definition. Once that is done, I'm going to do some organization in my world outliner and drag that directional light up into this lighting section. And since I no longer need it, I'm going to delete the cube. So this is a Lookdev look. Anything we put into it should be flat, evenly lit, so we can focus on putting our scenes together. The last thing we want to do, once we've got all this set up, is save all. First rule of Unreal, save all, save often, because it will crash and you will lose work. As we're making this Lookdev, we can use a template, which is this LSL Real World Lookdev template. This will automatically include all of the setup. However, for my instance, I'm going to choose none and hit create. That's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to start bringing in assets from the content browser to create a small scene. Thank you for watching.